When we look at perfect competition, the first thing we talk about is the assumptions of perfect competition. Okay, the first assumption of perfect competition basically is this, that if you are in perfect competition, then all firms are price takers. Price takers means basically that you have no market power and the price is determined through the market forces of demand and supply. In other words, a firm is kind of like has a perfectly elastic demand curve, because when you have a perfectly elastic demand curve, this means there is sort of no market power, no brand loyalty, and an elasticity. Perfectly elastic would mean that all you can do is sell the good at a particular price, but you can't charge any price above or below the market price. You can't charge any price above the market price. Why? Because the fact is that if you charge above the market price, no one is going to buy it from you, because you're selling something completely identical. You can't sell at any price below because you will make a loss. So all firms are price taker, number one. Number two is this, that there is complete freedom of entry and exit. In other words, there are no barriers to entry, and that would mean that like firms can easily come in and go whenever they want to from the business, and that would mean, because of this second assumption, there will be a lot of competition in perfect competition, because you can easily come into the market whenever there is profit happening. Make sense? Number three assumption is all firms produce identical or homogeneous products, which means that there is no differentiation, and that's why, because of no differentiation and everyone is selling identical product, there is no market power. Make sense? So there's no branding or advertising that is happening in this market structure. Number four is this idea that all sort of producers and consumers have perfect knowledge. All producers and consumers have perfect knowledge. What do we mean by perfect knowledge? Perfect knowledge basically means that there is no sort of uneven or asymmetric information. For example, if a buyer has more information than the seller, then the buyer can take advantage of that. Or a seller has more information than the buyer. Let's say a doctor has more information about your sort of illness than a patient, then a doctor can give you any medicine and you have to take that. But if buyers and sellers both have perfect knowledge, then no one can sort of take advantage of that. Okay, all of this would result in basically what we call an equilibrium, where we'll see that the market price is completely identical for all firms in the business. So let's talk about next thing, short run equilibrium. The short run equilibrium for the firm would be such, so we'll make our demand and supply. So this is my market. So we have a market, demand and supply, and where market, demand and supply meet, you get the market price of, let's say, $10. And this quantity, let's call this capital Q naught, is the quantity at which the good is sold. At this price of $10, what we are going to show is that the firms in the market, so this is one firm in the market, the firms in the market are at the price of $10 is facing a demand curve. Price of $10 is facing a demand curve which is perfectly elastic. Now, what do we mean by perfectly elastic? Now, this means this demand curve is the price, which means that if you are selling at $10, you can sell any quantity. Whatever quantity you want to, you can sell it at this price. But you can't charge any price above, or you can't charge any price below this. Now, before I move on to the equilibrium, I just want to talk about quick couple of things, that this demand is also the MR and is also the AR. So what exactly do we mean by MR and AR? What is AR? AR is simply average revenue, which is called total revenue over Q. So it's P times Q over Q. Isn't that true? So average revenue आपका क्या होगा? What is your average revenue? That simply means its average revenue is P. So on average, because the price is equal to 10, your average revenue is simply your price. Make sense? What about your marginal revenue? Marginal revenue is simply change in TR over change in Q. What we say marginal revenue is the additional revenue from an extra unit sold. In this case, what is my extra revenue? And that would simply be price as well. Why? Simply because of the fact that if you look at this, that if you sell, for example, if you sell 10 units, what's your total revenue? Anyone? If you sell 10 units, total revenue would be price is 10 times 10 quantity, 100. While if you sell 11 units, the price is 10 times 11 would be 110. Therefore, MR is simply 110 minus 100 or 10. So your MR will always be equal to the price as well. Only in perfect competition, where you have a perfectly elastic demand curve, your MR is equal to your price. Make sense? Because every time you sell an extra unit, you get the price as the extra revenue. Okay? Now that's one concept that we're talking about. So your demand curve is basically equal to price, which is equal to MR. The next thing we want to talk about, and I'm going to focus here, zoom here completely. Is there any problem before we move on? Okay. If you look at this one, I'm going to draw my marginal cost curve. My marginal cost curve is like this. What is important to see, let's assume MC is equal to MR at this quantity of 10. What is important to see is what is happening before 10 units versus what is happening after 10 units. Before 10 units, your MR is greater than MC. While after the 10 units, your MR is less than MC. Isn't that true? When MR is greater than MC, what we say is this, that the extra revenue, is MR, is more than the extra cost. So if the extra revenue is more than the extra cost, you should always be producing more as total profit is rising. Isn't that true? जब आपके पास extra revenue है, वो positive है, then extra revenue is more than extra cost, then your marginal profit, your extra profit would be positive, which means your total profit always go up because of that. Similarly, when MR is less than MC, your quantity should fall as total profit falls. Why? Because extra revenue is less than extra cost. This means your extra profit is negative. But at the point here, at this quantity, here at this point, MR equals MC. And what we say that MR equals MC would mean your total profit would be maximum. So like from an MCQ perspective, we need to remember this, that whenever you have an MCQ or whenever you have a question which says MR is greater than MC, we should always produce more. Whenever MR is less than MC, you should always produce less. And whenever MR equals MC, this is where the profit is maximized. Okay. So for us, the short-run equilibrium or any equilibrium, if you're a profit maximizing firm, should happen when MC is equal to MR. Okay. Now I'm going to move to a diagram below because I have less space here, just to talk about basically the equilibrium that can have three scenarios. Okay, so let's move on. So pi is the symbol for profit, and that's why we're saying that when MR is greater than MC, basically your marginal profit is positive, so that's why total profit goes up. Every time you sell extra, if your profit is positive, you make your total profit go up. Make sense? This brings us to the next discussion, which is basically in the short run, we'll see three scenarios happening. We'll see either supernormal profit, we'll see normal profit, or we see economic loss. Okay, supernormal profit is basically a scenario. Now, in all of these cases, MC is equal to MR. We are a profit maximizing firm. Our objective is to maximize profit, so MC is always equal to MR. But if MC is equal to MR and price is greater than ATC, like if price is more than average total cost, then the firm must be making supernormal profit, which means positive profit, also called abnormal profit. But when price is equal to ATC, this is where we say we are making a normal profit. And then the economic loss would be when the price is less than ATC. Okay, so in perfect competition, you could have all the three scenarios happening in the short run, can possibly happen in the short run. Either if a firm is making supernormal profit or normal profit or economic loss. Okay, supernormal profit ka diagram, let's make a supernormal profit here. For a supernormal profit, this is my demand, which is equal to MR, equals to price, right? And this is my marginal cost. So I'm making Q star quantity because MC is equal to MR. But my ATC is such that ATC is below my price. ATC is here, while my price is here. In other words, if you zoom it, your price is at Q star, your price is at A, but your ATC is at B. And that's why your supernormal profit is P minus ATC, or in other words, it's this shaded region, which is profit is equal to P minus ATC times Q star. Okay, MC is equal to MR, P minus ATC times Q is your supernormal profit. Then let's look at what happens when you have a normal profit. In the case of normal profit, we'll draw everything like what we've drawn pehle, but there's also one more thing that we'll do here, which is basically make our ATC in a manner. So let's say this is my marginal cost. MC is equal to MR is happening at Q star, that's my price. But my ATC is such that it's tangent to my price. So I'm making a normal profit. And for us, is normal profit a bad scenario? And the answer is no, because in a normal profit, you're covering both your accounting costs and both your implicit costs and your explicit costs. So you making normal profit would mean you want to stay in the business. You don't want to leave the business because you are doing better than the next best alternative out there. So you want to stick in the business because you are making normal profits, which means it's an acceptable scenario in the short run or even in the long run. You don't want to leave the business if you are making normal profit. Makes sense? The third scenario is economic loss. This is where we will probably be thinking about, like, should we stay in the business or not? And that's basically the economic loss scenario. So MC is equal to MR, the quantity is Q star. Now we look at where our ATC would be. Our ATC would be here above the price, and there's one thing which is important to understand is that I'm going to make my line at Q star. This is my ATC, but this is where my price is. At B, my price is, at B I have my price, at A I have my ATC, and that's why the firm is making a loss equal to P minus ATC. So your profit is negative, which is P minus ATC times Q star. Make sense? So that's our three equilibrium scenarios that can happen. You can have a supernormal profit where price is greater than ATC. You could have a normal profit where price is equal to ATC, or you can have an economic loss where price is less than ATC. Make sense? So now what we need to talk about is basically economic loss in the short run. So when you have economic loss in the short run, we can do two things. Either we could continue to produce, or we could shut down. And what I'll explain in a little while is that price is less than ATC, but you still continue to produce if price is greater than equal to AVC, but you will shut down when price is less than AVC. Okay, so why is that the case? Let's talk about this. So basically what we say here is this, that in the short run, no matter what output I make, in the short run, a firm has to pay its fixed cost. Fixed cost is a cost that you can't deny or you can't run away from, because in the short run, you might have some rents, you might have some contracts, some fixed costs. That is irrespective of whatever output I make. So if I want to today close my business, I still have to pay fixed costs. So what I want to see is this, that I'm making a loss. Am I covering any part of my fixed costs or not? When you look at price is greater than AVC, what we'll see is this, that the firm is recovering, because the price is so high, that the firm is recovering all its variable costs and some part of its fixed costs. But when price is less than AVC, the firm is not recovering any of its fixed costs and even not the complete variable cost. So it will be like, if I'm not covering any part of my variable cost, if I'm not recovering any part of my fixed cost, and even some part of my variable cost is not recovered, I will actually minimize losses. It minimize its losses by shutting down and pay only fixed costs. Okay, I'll show that in a diagram in 1 minute, but the idea goes is that why produce when you are not even covering your any part of your fixed cost? So you can just pay your fixed costs and go, because otherwise you will also be paying some part of your variable cost. So let's see this in a diagram. Let's first make a diagram for continuing to produce. So zoom it here. Making slightly bigger diagram so that we can show. So this is our demand curve, which is my MR. Again, MC is this, so we're making Q star. Right? Now, if this is my ATC, the problem is this, that although I'm making a loss, and let's say my price is $10 and my ATC is like $18, so I'm making a loss of, and let's say this is 100, I'm making a loss of $800 here. But what if your AVC is like such that your AVC is, let's say, $8. Now, if I ask you guys, what is my economic loss? My economic loss is P minus ATC times Q, which is equal to $8, because price is 10, right? So 10 minus 8, which is $8. So it's like minus 8 times 100, or we have a loss of $800, right? But what's my fixed cost right now? My fixed cost is simply your ATC minus AVC times Q. In other words, this distance, horizontal distance, which is difference between ATC and AVC, is AFC. So it's like 18 minus 8, which is $10, times Q, which is 100, which means $1,000. So in other words, I'm going to call it fixed cost, so negative. So in other words, I have two options. Either I shut down right now and pay $1,000, or I continue to produce and bear a loss of 800. So I'll be like, I can minimize my losses by just paying my, by producing, because what is happening is this, that this part of my fixed cost, look at this guys, this part of my fixed cost is recovered. This purple part is my part of the fixed cost that is recovered, while this is my economic loss. So at least I'm recovering some part of my fixed cost. So I'll be like, if I close down, I still have to pay the whole fixed cost. So I just continue to produce because price is at least greater than AVC. So in the short run, firms will always produce because price is greater than AVC. So you're covering some part of your fixed cost. Okay? But let's see a scenario where you would want to shut down. So what if this is happening? Price is still 10, this is my MR, this is price. So this is my AVC. In this case, let's say my ATC is like $22. My AVC is like $20. So what's happening here is that my MC is equal to MR. My fixed cost is still, I'm sticking with the same numbers. My fixed cost is ATC minus AVC, which is 22 minus 20. In fact, I should say 22 minus, let's call it 12, sorry. 22 minus 12. So my ATC minus AVC times Q, which is going to be basically 10 times 100 or $1,000. But my economic loss is more it's 8P minus ATC times Q, which is going to be 12 times 100 or $1,200. So in other words, now look at what is happening here. If I shut down, I just pay this area, my fixed cost. But if I continue to produce, I'm paying purple area plus additionally I also pay this area, which is the part of the variable cost that I have not recovered. So in this case, my price is so low that I'm not even covering some part of my fixed variable cost. So I rather would want to shut down and minimize my losses. Make sense? So in this scenario, when price is less than ABC, we just simply shut down. Does that make sense? So that's the important principle that we need to understand, that whenever price is greater than ABC, we continue to produce. Whenever price is less than ABC, we shut down. Okay? This brings us to the next thought in the short run, which is basically how do we make a supply curve of a firm. So, okay. So for the firm supply curve, this is what we say. Firm's supply curve. For the firm supply curve, what we say is this, that if I draw my marginal cost curve, I'm making a dot of marginal cost for 1 minute. If I draw my marginal cost curve, and if I tell you guys this, that this is my ABC, okay, and let's say if I say my demand curve is, right now, let's say my demand curve is D1. Let's say D1 is equal to MR1. So this is my price, P1. If I say demand curve is a D1, then MC is equal to MR happens here. Yes? Will you produce this output? And the answer is no. Why? Because price is less than ABC. So this quantity you will never produce. In fact, you will also, till this point X, you will never produce any quantity. So therefore, this MC below ABC is not relevant to you, because it's below the point where you're shutting down. All the MC above ABC is something which matters to us, because you will always produce when the price is greater than ABC. But any point below X you will never produce. That's why MC below ABC is something which doesn't matter to us. But when MC is above ABC, we call this the firm supply curve. Why do we call it the firm supply curve? Because what is the definition of supply curve? Supply curve shows you the relationship between price and quantity produced. Right? Look at this. If your demand curve was, for example, let's call this D2. So price is P2, demand curve is D2, which means this is my new MR. Then MC is equal to MR would mean, let's look at this point A. Would you produce point A? You will produce at point A. And how much quantity? And the answer is this quantity. Let's call this Q2. In fact, if your demand falls to P3, you will make point B as well. And therefore, you will make all the points here. These are telling you the quantities that you will make, because MC is equal to MR. So this means that MC is the supply curve, because it tells you the price and the quantity. The price and the quantity. Similarly, the price and the quantity. Therefore, it is the firm supply curve. Make sense? So for us, the firm supply curve, firm's supply curve is the MC above ABC. Make sense? And therefore, if somebody asks you, okay, then what's the market supply curve? Market supply curve is simply the horizontal summation of the firm's supply curve. Okay, so basically this is your short run discussion. Okay, so in the long run, basically what happens is that in the long run, two things can happen. If there is a profit made by firms in the industry, so if price is greater than ATC, what happens is this, that since there are no barriers to entry and exit, remember in perfect competition there is no barrier to entry and exit, if there's profit happening, then this would result in entry of new firms. When new firms enter the industry, because they can easily enter, the supply of the industry will shift to the right. Because new firms are entering, the supply of the industry, the whole industry will shift to the right. When the industry supply curve shifts to the right, price will fall till all firms make normal profit. Okay, and when they make normal profits, there is no incentive for any firm to enter, price become equal to ATC. So what we argue is this, that in the long run, if there's supernormal profit happening, it will encourage new firms to enter, new firms will enter, and that would result ultimately in every firm to make a normal profit. And that normal profit would mean there is an equilibrium that would be reached. Similarly, if you have an economic loss, then price is less than ATC, which would mean because there's a loss happening, some firms would leave the industry. So some firms who are unable to survive will exit, which would mean the supply of the industry will shift to the left, right? As firms are leaving, supply of the industry will shift to the left. We'll see because of that, price will rise till, okay, what if there's a loss happening in the short run? So this is a demand and supply, and let's say there is a price P naught. At this P naught, firms are making a loss, so we'll make a loss scenario. Okay, so this is the amount of loss that we're making at Q naught. This is my ATC. I'm not labeling it right now, but this is my price, this is my ATC, so I'm making a loss equal to this area. Because of this loss, what we'll see is this, the firms will exit the industry. Supply curve will shift to the left because of the loss in the industry in the long run. The price would start to rise, and this is an exit, and that exit would mean you would have a normal profit where price is equal to ATC. So if you were at A in the short run, you would be at B in the long run. Ultimately, all firms under perfect competition will make normal profit. So profit means new firms enter. When new firms enter, they will be basically supply curve shifting to the right, and therefore normal profit. While economic loss would mean basically firms exit, price will go up as supply curve shifts to the left, and that would mean ultimately everyone will make a normal profit. Okay, so that's your perfect competition.